Okay, well, congratulations to all the winners. But if you're a loser like me, why, I hope you got something out in the exhibit area. First of all, I simply want to thank Nancy Lynch and Nancy Williams for arranging the entire program today, including the array of door prizes here. We appreciate very much your showing up. My name is Ken Stark, the president of UIRA this year, and I have the privilege of serving as a introducer, I guess, for this program. We're really in kind of bad news, good news situation. The bad news first. Our scheduled speaker over the weekend had to cancel. This was Dr. Victor Sprecher. Several of us have heard him speak before. He's very impressive. He is going to, I think, give us a rain check on this. But I wanted to share with you what he sent over the weekend in an email. I'm so sorry to inform you of this so late, but my wife has suffered a severe lower back injury, and the earliest time for surgery is early this Tuesday morning. She's in a great deal of pain, and I really need to be with her. I think all of us can understand a situation like that, and we certainly extend our best wishes to him and her for successful surgery. We're hoping that we eventually will lure him to Iowa sometime in the future. But there is some good news too. We're most pleased to welcome Dr. Brian Kaskie as a substitute speaker. He by no means should be seen as a substitute. He could well be anyone's speaker, as he has been at a number of national gatherings that I have attended. He's associate professor in the UI Department of Management and Policy in the College of Public Health. He's an expert in wellness programs, retirement readiness services, workplace exit pathways, and livable communities for older adults. He's received national attention for his work and for his presentations. He's done several presentations for a group called AROHE, the Association of Retirement Organizations in Higher Education, which is a national and really has become an international organization of groups such as ours. They have a convention every 2 years, and I know he's been at least at the two I have been at the University of North Carolina, and then this last August at the University of Minnesota. He was part of a panel at Minnesota which was discussing connecting campus and retirement communities. His presentation at that time was Successful Aging in Academic Institutions, and you can see the title of the presentation here today. Dr. Kaskie has a PhD in gerontology and public health from the University of Southern California, a bachelor's degree from Indiana University in Bloomington, and a master's degree from Washington University in St. Louis. We greatly appreciate Dr. Kaskie joining us literally at the last minute for our health fair today. So we welcome Dr. Kaskie.
Thank you for having me, and being a local person helped here. It wasn't that hard to make it in here last minute. I was also very excited to come and talk with you all. We've been working on a project here for several years that has to do exactly with this constituent body, associations of faculty and staff retirees at academic institutions across the country. So how did I get here today? It's been a long road. I was thinking about this earlier. I actually got interested in the study of older persons and the aging population in general way back in the mid-1980s. Back then, we didn't have a whole lot of policy structures in place to protect persons who were admitted to nursing facilities. Assisted living facilities didn't even exist back then. And all these other things, such as what you're doing here, were just fairy dust in a lot of imaginations, like things we should do, but we don't have a whole lot of folks on our campus who would warrant us to organize a senior college or a constituency of university retirees. So let me make sure. Acknowledgements here first. This work is in part supported by the TIAA-CREF Foundation and Corporation. How this work actually started off was just by a phone call. As you may know, University of Iowa is TIAA-CREF's single largest institutional client. There are more folks here participating in TIAA-CREF plans than any other institution across the country. So they often come here and try to provide programs and services and supports for administering your retirement accounts. For example, next week they're having some speaker come over to the business school to talk about financial planning and retirement. And they see this opportunity to support academic institutions as a win-win. A lot of people ask me, why are you working for TIAA-CREF? And I said, well, they're very interested in making sure they're good stewards for you all. So about 5 years ago, they said, well, what would you be interested in studying? And I said, well, I've looked over your portfolio, and I notice a lot of the previous research has to do with when people are going to retire based on income. What percentage return are they expecting from their mutual fund? And very discrete or finite issues related to money. And I said, you know, that's great, but it's really not what people, especially people in academics, are concerned with day in, day out. A lot of us like to know we have a good retirement plan. We like to know TIAA-CREF's a good steward, but whether or not we get a 4.756 annual return on the one mutual fund versus a 4.24 is something we don't really look at too often. And I said, what I found is people are more interested in the non-financial aspects of retirement. What am I going to do once I do choose to leave the university? What is there for me to go to, and what sort of organizations are out there to support me in my retirement era? Number of groups on campus. This has truly been an interdisciplinary effort. I've engaged a number of groups from across the river, the medical school, and our College of Public Health to work on this. And why are we here studying academics? I want to be careful since I'm on mic, but it's true. Tenured faculty are now the oldest profession. They have surpassed every other labor category in the United States in the past decade. That is proportionally, as a distinct class in your Bureau of Labor Statistics, people who have academic appointments are median age older than any other profession. Doctors, lawyers, the other sort of groups you typically think are older and wiser, judges, for example. And this is largely driven by two factors. One, it's a great job to work at a university. It's really enjoyable. It's not the kind of job that wears you down physically or challenges your health status so that at some point you're forced to retire simply because you can't make it into work anymore. We just don't suffer those same slings and arrows as, let's say, somebody who works in a manufacturing sector. The other thing is we've had a law work in our favor. The Age Discrimination in Employment Act made an exception for tenure faculty and said, you know, we can't apply any age-based criteria to the review of any of the employees in these academic institutions. Now, magically, this came out when I was in grad school, and I didn't really think about it at the time, but towards the end of the 1990s, all of a sudden, junior faculty positions offering tenure lines started to dry up more and more. If you're on either coast, you found they came up with clever alternatives like adjunct faculty or temporary faculty, clinical faculty, research faculty. And it was all a way to basically address the issue that, ooh, we have tenured faculty and we were expecting them to stay on longer than what we initially planned. And the data hold up. So prior to the year 2000, if you looked at any academic campus, any faculty member who was over the age of 65, about 70% of them were going to retire by the age of 70. Now, it's reversed. You look at any academic campus and any faculty member over the age of 65, you can count on at least 70% of them staying on till the age of 70. And this also applies for staff too, who wish to stay engaged in the workforce. It's just had a pervasive effect across the 1,500 academic institutions here in the United States. And TIAA-CREF says, what are we going to do about it? I don't know. So the first thing we did is we did a survey. And we looked at academic institutions across the country, and we said, well, is this on your radar? Or have you formed emeriti groups? Have you formed retirement staff associations? Have you figured out how to employ FMLA benefits for employees who are involved with elder caregiving? How many of you knew this? But FMLA doesn't just apply to younger females with children. It also applies to us. People like me and yourselves who have aging parents, and you're still on the job and you need to juggle caregiving responsibilities for that aging parent with your work. Part of our work here at the University of Iowa, we found out about any given time, 1 out of 5 of our employees who answer that survey are taking care of a parent. No idea. That equals the number of employees we have who are taking care of children. And yet we look at our institution and our community, we don't have a sufficient number of daycare or other sort of supportive service alternatives to help those people out. In fact, for you to go and find FMLA, it's a process which you have to go searching your HR site, asking for that leave. It's simply not normalized yet like it is for women once it's known that they're bearing children and ready to take 6 to 12 weeks of paid leave. So, after we discovered that all these institutions are facing a similar problem, we started to figure out some institutions are doing a really great job. They're saying, you know, this is part of who we are. This is part of our mission. Just as much as we need to take care of students and staff and their families, we also should be thinking about our retired employees, both faculty and staff. Now, it's kind of surprising, the institutions we found that were really on the leading edge with all this, leading edge. One, Western Washington University, right? Anybody know where Western Washington is? Right. But on all our indices of what are you doing for your aging faculty and staff, they were among the highest rated. Western Washington's in Bellingham, which is, if you know Washington, it's a gorgeous retirement community. So sort of by de facto, so many folks were deciding to stay on in Western Washington that they started to make programs and structures at their university to support their interest. That's the story we unraveled as we dug into those numbers. Another institution that really is farther ahead on the curve than others, University of Kentucky, down there in Lexington. Not only do they have a fantastic basketball team, but they are head and shoulders above other institutions as far as programming things like varied retirement pathway options, payouts that are working for you, not just, here, we're going to give you one chance to retire. If you don't take it, that's it. It's come in, let's talk individually with each faculty and staff member and figure a way that we can make this work both for you and for your department. Now, what was behind University of Kentucky? Harlan Sanders. Harlan Sanders, the Kentucky Fried Chicken King, actually bequeathed a large part of his estate to support exactly these kind of efforts. So it's really neat to find out the stories, what make these particular institutions go. And Iowa also rated highly on these. You guys, we have a lot of neat stuff going on here, and we'll comb through some of that as we go forward. So after we established that there's some institutions that are out there doing good things for their retirees, we also found out most, if not 4/5 of the institutions simply were putting it off. So if you look around the room, a lot of you are going to say, well, I don't know what he's talking about. We got it good here. Why are we going to change it? Just recognize you're in the minority. We're pretty lucky here. And actually, on one sense, we could be doing a lot more. In the other sense, we're way far ahead than some of the other campuses I've been to. Because there we found administrations just haven't seen it as part of their interest. They don't see it as part of their mission. And to be honest, it's individual self-determination. Faculty like it to be able to say, I'll tell you when I'm ready to retire. Or staff says, I'll let you know when I'm ready to go. And it doesn't always result in the best outcome for the institution. So it's a tricky thing to engage in this kind of work. So at that point, I said to TIAA-CREF, well, let's get the other side of the picture. Why don't we ask the employees of a large institution, instead of having top-down policies, that is prescriptive policies made out of the provost or the president's office, let's find out from the ground up what employees would like. So we had a number of questions in a survey. Some of you may remember that we sent out a survey about 2 years ago. And we sent it out to every single employee on this campus. And when you do that and you don't provide any money or incentive to participate, we figure maybe we'll be lucky to get 10% response. We got 25%. People are interested in telling us their stories on this issue. Not only did they spend time taking a survey, we were able to monitor how long they spent on the survey. Don't tell anybody, but they spent up on average of 30 minutes writing their responses out because they wanted to give us a rich, detailed account for what they think the university could be doing, they are already doing, and what they could be doing to make successful aging happen here at the University of Iowa. So we just have a treasure chest full of data. And so today what I want to just focus on is one section of that survey that has to do with housing. So just for all the researchers in the crowd, this gives you a sense. We have 15,000 employees who received this survey. In the end, we got about 22% what we call clean data that we could use for analysis. This was representative of faculty and staff, people working at UIHC, people working on the east side of the river. It's a great survey. And we've just been running studies off of it ever since. For example, the caregiver study. Just to give you a sidebar, we found out here about 20% of our employees are in a caregiving situation. Less than half are even aware of supportive programs that are available to them in the university or in the community. That is, a lot of us suffer, if you will, or take on the burden of caregiving, not knowing there are support groups available to us, or there's information services, or there are FMLA benefits. We simply just say, well, this is how my mom took care of her mom. I guess this is how it's going to go. We don't need that. There's plenty of great programs available. At Elder Services, for example, we are partnering with the university to provide a caregiver support group. Based on these survey results, we suggested, hey, maybe we should do this once a semester. Those sessions are filled out every semester. We got to do more. We just had a meeting with the HR group and said, we need to start giving these sessions in the summer because that's how high demand is. So that was one aspect of the survey. Another aspect, we wanted to know about housing. And, you know, we were being tricky. I've done these surveys before. So I said, how many of you are happy with your current house? I guess I should have not put that slide up. How many of you are happy where you are right now? Never going to leave. Everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, okay. Well, you're not unlike our survey response. 3/4 say everything's fine. I never plan to leave where I'm at. But then if you remember our survey, we started putting out scenarios, we call them, or staging experiences like, well, what happens if you break your hip and you're in the hospital and at the point you're being discharged because they got to, you know, address census issues and get you out, so, you know, because they have people waiting to fill the beds. And the discharge planner will come to you and say, well, can we move you back home? Is your home outfitted with rails and grab bars and all those things? And you'll say, no. So then what happens? You get put into another facility that can accommodate your needs for assistance. And sometimes that will only be for a few days. Other times it turns into a lot longer than that. So once we put those scenarios out there, what do you think happened when we asked the question again? So is your home going to be hard for you to live in as you get older? All of a sudden we went from saying 25% to nearly 60% said, yeah, I got to start thinking about this a little bit more seriously. That shows you how much information is yet to be taken up by the people themselves who are most interested in this issue. So after we got an interest in, hey, the possibility you might need to relocate from the current house or modify the house you live in, what would you do? So we threw out the typical. would you move into a continuing care assisted living facility? Most people said, yeah, that sounds right. That's what everybody else does. That's kind of what's being prescribed. That's what I know. My neighbor just did that. He's having a good time. Okay. Then we just threw out the idea of, would you want to live in a village, a senior-friendly village, where everybody gets along, birds chirp, dogs play freely, neighbors come over and help each other? We didn't describe it quite like that, but we just threw out the term village. And we were surprised how many people said, yeah, I'd be interested in that too. So then we did the same thing. We started detailing, well, what does a village really mean? What makes a village or a new form of housing work? And we started giving the descriptors. Well, it's not segregated over here. It's not 10 miles west of town. There's not a huge entry fee. It's not like it's all tile and it has that smell of industrial, custodial cleanser like most of these places do, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden we asked the question again. We're like, would you move into a livable community? And would you want to be a part of this village? And our numbers jumped through the roof. So then the last one, right? Because it's all just talk. This is all just great stuff to sit around and chat about until you ask for people to throw in some money. So the concept was here is, would you be willing, as an employee of the University of Iowa, when you review, right, because once a year at least, TIACREF asks you to review your investment portfolio. How many of you have actually been over to their office to talk to them about this? Okay. Well, how many of you still do it? That's another issue we're talking to TIACREF about. It's like, what happens when they leave the university? Are you still engaging with them? That's important. Sidebar. Back to this. We said if you were to be presented with an opportunity to take some portion of your retirement contributions and not throw them into the real estate trust that they have for the German strip malls or the Chinese apartments, because they do have those. This is where this idea germinated, actually. I was at a meeting with their real estate division. And I said, why don't you do a Bailey building and loan here? And they're like, what? I go, why don't you let these people take their own money and put it back into their own community, their own village? Create an REIT, name it something like Golden Hawkeyes, Silver Hawks, whatever you want, okay? And let them decide how much money should go into these developments so that when they're ready to move, nobody's asking you to leave your house until you want to, but when you're ready to move, there'll be somewhere you've already invested in and you have a piece of ownership in. 3 out of 4 people said, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. And that's got TIACREF's attention. They're like, oh. I said, yeah, it's out there. It's an untapped source of interest that we're not meeting. So we started doing some more homework, and we found out other universities, guess what, are doing this. University of Florida has one. They started it in 2004. They've tripled in their size in the last 10 years. About 2 years ago, based on these results, I brought out a former, now a colleague, former professor of mine, who was on the front end of the assisted living movement. He's an architect who happens to also study gerontology. He helped Assisted Living Concepts. That was the original corporation based out of Portland that came up with the notion of not everything has to be a nursing home. So I said, Vic, where are you at now with your latest concepts on senior housing? Why don't you come out to Iowa City and talk to us about it, because I think we're on to something. So he came out and he gave a really nice presentation. Anybody who wants to see that, feel free to email it to me. I want many of you to see it as possible. And I went back to TIACREF and I go, I think we're on to something here. I'm not sure what, but let's keep exploring. So since that time, I've met with leadership at Grinnell College. In fact, one of the leaders of their long-term care community came to our presentation with Vic, had lunch with him. Since that time, they built a 35-unit apartment there in Grinnell. It's already sold out, and most of the people moving in, alums from Grinnell. So think about this as an opportunity for people to create their own housing complex in the place that they want to live most, the college community in which they work. We've been down to Indian Hills Community College in Ottumwa, same process. We said you have a lot of older adults down here in Ottumwa. They love this community. They don't want to leave, yet they can't stay in their own home any longer. The incubator for this idea, or the germ for this idea, was a local citizen who said, I go down to Florida 6 months a year, I come back 6 months a year to be around my kids, but I don't want to take care of my 40 acres anymore. Can you build me something on the campus? In return, I'll help finance it. And this is where I want to stay because I love being on this campus. If you've been down to Ottumwa, the Indian Hills campus is gorgeous. Nestled in the hills, next to a golf course, bike paths, tennis courts. They have a culinary academy, massage therapy program, and we're working now on establishing operational agreements to link them all. 40-unit complex will go up there, built with seniors to stay in place in mind and live on the college campus. And then last, we've made an effort to get things going here in Iowa City. Now, Iowa City is a particularly ripe area for us. Why is that? Because 5 years ago when we did our population estimates, we messed them up. And we messed them up in a good way, in the sense that we underestimated how many people are moving here currently over the age of 65. Way higher than we thought, and guess what? In the next decade, when those 55 to 64-year-old boomers move forward and become 65 and old, it's going to double again. You're moving, looking around the room, okay, the people you see here in about 5 years will have twice as many. Okay? That's how big this is. So when I talk to people and they say, oh, aren't we doing enough? Isn't everything just fine for me? I say, yeah, that works for you. But the problem is there's going to be a lot of people outside. And do we have the structures and processes in place to handle them? I'm not sure. Now, we have not been, how should we say, we have been noticed. I'm sure some of you have already seen this. We're rated by the Milken Institute, by AARP, as one of the best cities to retire in. Okay, I was just over at a meeting with AARP. We had AARP out here, thanks Bob, everybody, 10 years ago, right? He's going to nod because yes, he was there. We had them out here 10 years ago talking about this stuff, and I was just at a meeting where other people in the room, it's if they just discovered this issue. They just discovered they're older adults in their community. We are so far ahead on the curve in this sense. And what are we so far ahead on? Building a community that promotes successful aging. What are those component parts? Well, the first is healthcare. Okay, we have a lot of doctors and nurses and dentists and allied health professionals around here. Now, as we dug into our report, we found, well, just having a doctor doesn't mean they're trained in geriatrics or they understand all the preferences that older adults have for end of life, things like that. So that's where we staked out an agenda and said, you know, it would really be great if we move forward on things like honoring your wishes. So the work that Bob's group did 10 years ago has laid a blueprint for what we're doing today. It's no accident that the Honoring Your Wishes campaign has really taken off here, because we said, hey, we need that. Okay? What else are we really good at here? Education. Hello. Okay? Not only does the campus, we have, senior college. We have retired University of Iowa Retirement Association. You're holding educational events. TI Crefts holding educational events. Center on Aging used to do this stuff. They had a whole program of 500 people separate from all this, also doing educational programs. I mean, it's out there. Let's not forget the Senior Center. Where are you? They do a lot of educational programs. If you want to drop in and take some sort of update, gather information on aging, this is a great place for it. You also got a lot of great leisure opportunities, but there's something missing. And that would be, oh, somebody's tracking with me, housing. Okay, when we look at all the data, and we saw this even back then, we don't do so well in housing options here. Okay? Now again, let's be careful. People in this room, you're probably all maximizing your individual utility. You're probably living where you want, in the manner you want. But again, there's a whole host of folks outside this room, and for those folks, housing isn't necessarily where they want it to be. They want something different. So, let's step back in our time machine here, give a little theory. This is what it used to be, and this is what a lot of us grew up. Okay, in Iowa, I worked on a paper last fall with the woman from Iowa State, and we talked about this notion of aging migration, in-migration. And so what happens in a lot of communities where there's not a lot of migration, that is, people move in from California and then they move out and go to Florida, and then they come in from another place where they do things differently, they bring in new ideas, things start to change. But if you're in a community where what you know about growing old is not from the guy who came to the library to give a lecture, but from what your dad tells you growing old's like, the chances of you changing things over decrease significantly. So in those communities where there's not a whole lot of in-migration of new concepts, structures, and processes, and this was only 20 years ago, right? We didn't have assisted living until 1992 or so, okay? You either stay home or you move into a nursing home. And it was a pretty stark contrast back then. Remember, this is prior to the federal law called the Nursing Home Reform Act. This is one of the reasons I got into this field. I worked in a place like this. And I'm like, really? This is what we're going to have happening as the boomers get older? Ugh, no thanks. So then, in the 90s, guess what started happening? And we have it here. Proliferation of something called the continuing care retirement community. Oh, it's not just a nursing facility. We got assisted living, we got independent living, we got step care, we got rehab care. We got this big conglomeration of different housing options available. But, as the business model says, what do you have to do? You just can't move in and out. For these to work, from a business side, you have to buy in. Okay? You have to be on their waiting list, and then you, as needs change, you can move up and down the continuum of care. Not a bad model, okay? But it's not really what people want anymore. People, by and large, still want to stay home. Okay? I don't want to move over there. I want to stay where I'm at. I'm happy. But if you look closely, even at the new developments, these were houses we found that were being sold as independent living. But take a look at them. For all you savvy folks in the housing world of aging services, what's the shortcomings with these places? We saw it when the peninsula went up. We said, we'd like you to build universal design housing accessible to all people. Sure. Then we went out there, we took a photo. First thing we saw, steps. Those don't work. They work for you when you're 65, 70, but when you have that hip replacement, all of a sudden you're challenged. Or as you get older, you're forced to move. Okay, that's not good. They say they had accessible kitchens, but here are the pictures of them. We're like, really? If I was in a wheelchair, I couldn't move around there that one time. Now remember, most of us aren't in a wheelchair all the time, but it does happen. Occasionally we'll go into the hospital. Will increase after age 70. The likelihood of you needing a house that can accommodate you increases significantly. But these houses just aren't being built that way. Look at the tub here. Okay? That's a disaster waiting to happen. And here's what I hear from people all the time. Well, why do I need to put it in now? Because guess what will happen eventually? And we have the data to show. You will try to step over that thing, and you'll slip and you'll break your hip. Then you'll say, oh, I need to put in grab bars. But by then it's too late. And guess what? Then you're on that slippery slope down continuing care. Now, let's take a real nice close look here. These are blueprints I gathered from a local assisted living home, and they're marketing to you. They're appealing to your sense of, oh, I'm going to need to move at some point because, you know, I'm going to need assistance at some point. And then guess what they do when they move you into that assisted living? You're charging more, right? I'm not saying anything, hopefully too provocative here. But what do you charge for? And that's what we talked about up at Arohi. I don't get it. Well, you know, we're modifying your apartment. Really? So let's take it to blueprint design. Staring at that pretty closely. Okay? What did they do in the assisted living apartment? They took down a wall. That's the first thing they did. So that actually should, the construction cost should actually go down. Okay? Oh, and they swapped out one type of shower for another. And they gave you a raised toilet. Really? Okay. I guess. Why didn't you put that in there to begin with? I don't know. Oh, and then they think that everybody in assisted living is homogenous. Everybody in assisted living shouldn't be allowed to touch a stove. So guess what? We're going to take away those features from your apartment. So all these are cost savings to the builder. They take out your laundry, and then they charge you more. And so what do they must be charging for? Oh, it's for that person to come around once a day and knock and say, hey, are you doing okay? And they give you some other supportive services. But if you do the math, it doesn't quite add up. That's our current approach to housing right now. We have these continuing care retirement communities. They still force us to leave the home we want to grow up in, or a home that allows us to move in and not have to move out of ever again. That's where we are in the housing. So we got great housing options, but the next phase, we're not quite there yet. So where are we at? Multiple moves are inevitable. When you have to make those multiple moves, poor outcomes are the likely result. It also results in increased costs to you and your family. And this is not successful aging. Anybody in this room would say, this is how I want to end up, moving 4 times in the last 5 years of my life. Anybody? Thought so. So what are we thinking about here? Maybe a conceptual way to get at what I'm talking about is a theory called structural lag. Bob? Does that look? Okay, this is how it used to be. Okay? Single-room schoolhouses. This is where my mother-in-law and all her sisters taught in Kentucky, K through 12, all packed into one place. We could get away with it back then because why? There weren't that many kids. And if they were around, they're off working. Okay, but then this thing happened with baby boomers. They came along and they forced us to create more structures. We went from having just one high school to having multiple high schools. West, city, it's no mystery. The more the population grows and there's more kids coming up, the more high schools you need to build. Structures have to accommodate the demographic change. Then inside these structures, okay, oh, this is a point. It's gotten even crazier diversification, right? We have alternative high schools now. We have daycare centers, okay? Again, in just 50 years, we've gone from single-room schoolhouse to this multi-structure community school district. And why did that happen? Look around the room. Okay, it was a demographic push. We had to do something here to be responsive. Then, on top of it, processes getting put in place. We talk about this a lot when I'm out on the sports complex. When I was a kid, you were either on the end of a 75-0 baseball game and you loved it, right? Or you absolutely hated it, right? It turned you off to sports to be on a team in which the teams were stacked and, you know, you got beat. And what do they do now? I've been on an email exchange for the last 3 days about balancing my girls' softball teams because they don't want one team to be so much better than another. You know, if they beat them up all the time and they win by 10-run slaughter because it's not fun. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm engaged in this. But that's the processes now we have in place. And generally as a public body, we think that's a good thing. So processes or structures have to be built to accommodate the aging population, and then processes are put in place to make it better for us. Well, now the same thing's happening to the housing market for seniors. We can no longer just go from either being at home and bringing people in to moving to a skilled nursing facility which has some satellite supportive services. It's not an either-or option anymore. You guys are forcing change. When we do surveys, you say you want to live in a village environment that supports you, either staying at home or moving into something called an apartment for life. That is one more move, and then you don't have to move again. So what is an apartment for life? It's a house that's built with you in mind, and it's different than what we currently see. It's a house with absolutely no steps. It's a house with smart technology, so if you want somebody to check on how you're doing, they don't have to come around each morning to knock, okay? They just call. We're up in Madison, we're up in Madison. They have a whole movement up there, call service. We don't need to send somebody out there. Let's just call in. We have visual contacts now. We have the technology to make this work. Okay? So here's what one of the buildings we worked with out in Lowell, Massachusetts looked like. Doesn't look any different than what we have around the community, except you look a little bit more detail. There's no steps anywhere. None at all. So when you are having trouble walking or it's winter, you don't have any of those challenges. They're wide entryways. So if you need to bring in medical equipment or beds, wheelchairs, not a problem. And this is just based on the RFP issued by the developer. It's telling the guy building the place, don't give me a 32-inch door, go and buy the 38-inch door, and don't give me that nonsense it costs more, because it doesn't. We've priced them out. I've priced them out. Grab bars to redo a bathroom, $50. Don't tell me how it's too hard to build it. You guys are the biggest market force there is. You can demand it. Two sides. Every building has two sides worth of windows. My mom just moved into a facility down in Florida. It's like living in a dark shoebox, because the only window is down at the other, the apartment is from here to the doors. The window is as big as those two doors. It is dark. It's not a happy place during the day. I can see it. Tried to get her to think about multiple windows. Sister got involved, you know, that stuff. Okay, it's not been a good move for my mom. We want buildings that have lots of light in them. Who wouldn't? Okay, this is in Notre Dame. These are all walk-in showers. Okay, these are all kitchens designed for your mobility in mind. Okay, plenty of room to navigate. They're a little higher. Just small stuff that currently isn't in the imagination of our builders, because it's not being demanded of them yet. But don't worry, you guys will start asking for it. Small stuff, we already see this. Not laundry that's stacked, but laundry that's raised, so we don't have to hunch over. Simple stuff on what we call UD features. What else? Smart home. This is what they have down in Florida. Looks like a regular home, but inside it's all wired up. Okay, so when you come home from a hospital experience, I had this past summer. My wife had one of these bags on her side, and they had the gall, right? That's how I look at it, the nerve to say, why don't you come in so the doctor can check on her bag? This is 3 days post-op. She's still pretty not doing well. But I had to accommodate them. And we go there, and guess how long we got to sit in the waiting room? A long time. And me being me, I didn't just let that go. And I walked up and down the hall, and I go, really? You couldn't have figured this out? I could tell you how you figure this out. Why don't you give us a camera, like with the one I use with my mom to do Skype with, and let me have it at home, so when the doctor's ready to see us, he can just see us and look at the bag, because that's all he spent, 5 minutes to look at the color of the bag. And I'm like, come on, we could do better than that. How do we make it happen? We start building homes with this technology inside of it. Again, it's not that expensive. I priced it out. It's just we got to demand it from them. If we don't demand it, they're not going to build it. Why should they? Okay? All sorts of variations you can put into this. We've also been talking to different healthcare providers. What does connectivity look like? It means when you fall down, okay, and you're in your home. Now, those of you in assisted living, this is no different. I'll be very blunt here and say, just because you're in assisted living doesn't mean that you're somehow going to get attended to faster than you would if you had a wired apartment that you could simply call out a code word, or the carpet features sensors that let you know when there's no movement. And then that provides a signal to a central hub that says something's going wrong in apartment 710. They'll call, they'll ask you if you need help, and they'll come out. You don't have to move into a big CCRC to make this happen. This could be built in your own home if you want it. So the other part of this is you want to build these things inside a livable community, which we already have here. But according to our report, we still have a ways to go. We're really good at acute care. We got plenty of hospital beds. We got plenty of rehab beds in this town, more than we possibly could need per capita. We bring in so many people from outside of Iowa City. We do a really good job here of what's called acute care. We also do a good job with rehab services. Okay? We also have great wellness opportunities. We did a survey with the university a few years ago. I noticed the wellness center is out there now. I asked them, why aren't you programming for older adults? They just said, well, we haven't thought of it. High time for older adults to go to CRWC and take water aerobics, Zumba Light right now, middle of the day. You'll go over there now and you'll notice in the pool. How many of you are over there, by the way? Some of you got free passes. We'll expect to see you over there. But you actually will see on the monitors now pictures of people with that color hair. That wasn't there 2 years ago. They're starting to get it. That's part of a livable community. Make it accessible for all ages to come to. Okay? What else do older adults want? We want more care to come to us at home. Again, if we're going to stay at home, meet our own preferences, then hello, providers, you got to help us do that. Okay? We don't want the big giant van that says, I'm old, coming to pick us up. Okay? You want supportive services. Okay? We have a program at Elder Services called the Volunteer Medical Driver Program. It's just one of your neighbors coming to get you and help you get to appointments. Big thing we would love to see here, intergenerational daycare. I've seen these in other communities. They're just vibrant, they're fun. We have great daycare, we need more of it. And this is the kind of stuff you'd want to see. We have great education opportunities, but we could probably do more. University of Wisconsin, people over the age of 60 can sit in on any class on campus that they want for free. We don't have that here. They can enroll in degree programs if they want to, because some of you are actually thinking, maybe I need a second career. Aging studies, perhaps. Okay? Can you enroll in that? Are you encouraged to enroll in that? No. I teach a class in Medicare and Medicaid. Should be the most popular class for older adults in there. I don't have anybody over the age of 26 in there. Okay? I have another class. There's nobody over 30 in that class. When I was at Southern California, our classrooms looked like this. There was always people who were over the age of 55 sitting in those classrooms. They enhanced the learning experience. It was fun to hear their perspective. We're sitting right next to a 22-year-old. We're not making that happen here. That's where we think this could go next. Okay? Plenty of opportunities for creative retirement centers here. I've been to those places at Maryland, Asheville. Look what you guys have to do now. You have to cobble together space. You're here free, right? Coralville Public Library, working on a budget. The next iteration of this effort for you all is to have this formally integrated into the campus. This shouldn't have to be so hard for you. This should become normal. People ask me, what do you want to do here? And I said, I want to make Iowa the leading example of how to take care of their aging employees and people in the community. So, more stuff that we could do. And this is the culmination of it. So last summer, I'd been talking to people in the community about this in a forum like this, and I'll often get people come up to me afterwards and say, I'd love to talk to you about this. 9 out of 10 of them are negative. You know, they're like, oh, we don't need that, or why do you do this? Or the developers are, we already have that, and, you know, I did this up in Cedar Falls, so why do I need to change what I'm doing? I go, you don't, you know, but it's not what we're talking about. It's not building a apartment for life embedded in a walkable community. So last summer, one of the new developers in town introduced himself, and I said, well, this is what I'd love to see. So I handed him all the architectural renderings. I say each of your apartments has to have 2 sides of windows. Okay, each has to have universal access. We have to have separate programmatic opportunities, maybe to put in a daycare center. We also don't want to just put in subway shops, right? We want these buildings to feature creative retirement centers. We talked to the CoLab, right? What we want to do is have people like you who have years of experience and knowledge meeting younger students and turning into an angel investors program. This is what we had at USC. I'd be in a class like this, half of the room was over 50, and they never said a word. And then I gave a presentation, and then I walked down the hallway, and somebody came up and tapped on my shoulder and said, my dad and I'd like to talk to you. I'm like, who are you? He goes, well, we're the other side of entrepreneurship. We're the investors. And I'm like, oh, we don't have that formally happening on this campus yet. We're talking about, oh, we want to do innovation. We need a place for that to happen. That's what we want to have in this kind of building. Creative Retirement Center like Asheville, Carolina has. They're really neat places. Alas, the city chose to go with more student housing, but we haven't given up yet. Okay, and so that's why I wanted to come here today. We've been talking about this because so many people came up to us afterwards like, what are you talking about? We read the proposal. What is this? And we said, this is apartments for life embedded in a livable community. Well, do I have to leave my house? No, you can stay at your house as long as you want because we want to put service providers inside this building that will help you do that. But we also want to build a place for other people who realize that their home they live in is too big. I mean, my biggest convert is my neighbor. You know, there's no way. And after we started talking about this, he goes, you know, I'm tired of shoveling my walk. I'm tired of mowing the yard. When is this thing going to be ready? Okay? So we have a variety of people who are interested in this. And the idea is once they move in, they don't necessarily have to leave if they don't want to. Back to Florida. Okay? Oak Hammock down there started off as something like this. It's now 3 times the size. 10-year growth. That's where I see us happening. So to close, all I'm here today really is not to try to meet Victor's, can't match him. I just want to get you guys excited about something like this because we're doing it here in this town. If you want to talk about meaningful pursuits, help us figure out what the next generation of aging programs and services and housing is going to look like. So with that, I'll open up the floor for questions. Thanks for your time. That was easy. Oh, I don't know her. I didn't pay her. Here's what we have right now. We're forming a planning committee. And we're following the process that we engaged in at Tumwa, where we're meeting on a monthly basis. And we want anybody who is interested in this to come. And we just want to hear what you want. Does it guarantee we're going to do what you want? Not necessarily, but it helps us think. Now, who else is in that room is what makes this interesting. Okay, we have representatives from the university there, so that idea of class audits, they're there hearing what you guys want. We have people from medical providers there who we're talking about what's called e-health. You guys ever, who's on my chart? Okay, my chart, when they put it in over at the hospital, had no idea who would be their #1 user. Who's their #1 user? You all. They didn't, I mean, I'm just looking at them going, really? You had no idea that this would be the #1 user of my chart services. So how can we build up my chart to make it even more effective? Those are folks who are in the meeting. We have folks from the city, because if we put one of these livable communities around the campus, which is what we want, we don't want you guys to walk out the door and be run over by a car. We also want you to be able to walk unhindered, okay, by, you know, those marauding undergraduates, okay, or whatever. So we're talking to the community, how can we make this walkable? In Berkeley, I worked out there, we have lights that are timed. So you get that extra 10 seconds, right? Anybody try to cross Burlington and it's a little scary? That's ridiculous. And all that takes is a group like us going back to the city and say, you want to bring us to move down here? Then you're going to have to retrofit the city a little bit. Because right now it's not built with us in mind, just like the school system wasn't built for us in mind when we started there. So just send me an email, briankaskie@uiowa.edu. We'll add you to the list. Others?
Would there not be value in an association?
Pardon me?
Would there not be value in an association like this, taking a stand saying, hey, this is something we want?
Oh, yeah. And you know, it's a tricky world to navigate here in Iowa City. Unlike, or much like San Francisco was, I'm always amazed. San Francisco, we had an earthquake when I was out there, and there's actually a guy I met where we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, one community group, another community group to decide how we're going to fix it. And it went on and on and on. I don't want to get us bogged down in formal groupings and you know, we have to have this organization or that organization approve. If you want to sign on, that's terrific. But I don't want any of you as individuals to think just because the organization isn't, you know, willing to say yes or no, that doesn't mean you shouldn't commit. But yeah, it'd be terrific if UIRA, we actually got, when I put up the building, said, yeah, we're interested in supporting this. So that's part of one of our meetings is we're detailing out, what does that mean? So take a look at your benefits you guys already have. You have access to the Wellness Center, libraries, a few other things. And we're like, that's all good. We don't want to disrupt that, but we could add more. Okay, and the notion is just, you know, have a standard fee and you cover all the things you want to access on campus, including class audits or discounts to this or that. So that would be the kind of thing that would be helpful to organize. So yeah, to answer your question, but is it necessary? No. Others? All right, well, thanks for letting me step in today. Hope you have a great day.